All right, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Thanks for joining. This is the T&E Technology and Entertainment practice at Millward Brown Digital, and we're going to be walking through some mobile versus desktop consumer activity today. Just to sort of get things started, today we're going to be have two of us speaking. Myself, Aaron Peterson. I'm a senior associate here at Millward Brown Digital on the tech and entertainment team, and I've been with Millward Brown for about a year and a half right now. And also jumping in to help me out on this presentation is Chris Collins, who's a VP here at Millward Brown Digital and leads the technology and entertainment practice. And so he'll be jumping in with some commentary and answering some questions later in the deck. And on that note, as we're going through this, if you have any questions or comments, please send them in through the GoToMeeting app interface there, and then we'll have a QA session towards the end of this to answer some of those questions. So getting right into our agenda for today, first we'll do a couple quick slides on introducing Millward Brown Digital and who we are and what we do. We'll do a brief overview of the project that we're looking at today and the methodology behind the work that we did. And then we'll get into the data itself and look at some of the mobile versus desktop engagement that we're seeing amongst consumers in the sort of technology, OEM, and retailer space. So we're going to be focusing kind of more on the technology side of the tech and entertainment practice here. And then finally, we'll do a quick wrap-up, and we'll leave some time at the end to do Q&A, and we're anticipating probably getting done a few minutes early and giving you guys back a little bit of your time. So jumping right into the first section of the deck about Millward Brown Digital, Millward Brown Digital really is the combination of three companies now. It started out last year when Compete and Dynamic Logic came together to form Millward Brown Digital. And we've further enhanced our capabilities and our product suite by bringing Insights Express into the fold in August of this year. So now we have all of the abilities to look at brand and media insights, the full consumer path to purchase, and advertising effectiveness across various platforms through the combination of these three companies. And really what we're all about is looking at best-in-class consumer behavior insights. And we do that by having really four key components to what we do. First, industry expertise, in that we have people, staff members who are ingrained in various verticals across the industries. So for instance, today we're focused on the tech and entertainment vertical. We have specialists who work in financial services and travel and automotive and CPG. And so our company really looks at providing that sort of level of expertise to help put more context around the data that you're seeing. The other big part of that is actual consumer behavior. So we'll talk about the Compete panel in just a few minutes in detail, but we measure actual consumer activity on desktop, laptop, and mobile devices. So it's not based off of what people are saying they thought they did, or any sort of recollection of their activities. This is based off of their actual behaviors online. Then, of course, by collecting all that data, we can really have deep insights into the consumer journey online. And what a lot of clients come to us for is really the competitive insights that we're able to deliver by being able to measure activity across various websites and channels online. And then finally, unrivaled accuracy. Our panel is the largest panel of its kind in the U.S., and that just allows us to have the depth of getting very accurate as we go further into online engagement metrics such as lower funnel and order activity. So starting to look at this project, what we wanted to do today was really start to scratch the surface of what's happening in the mobile space. So, we know that mobile is becoming a more and more bigger part of the consumer journey. And in fact, I was reading a report earlier today from IBM that showed that mobile sales on this past Cyber Monday were almost 30% higher than they were the previous year, and that mobile devices for the first time accounted for more than half of the online traffic that occurred on Thanksgiving. So clearly the impact of mobile is just becoming much more important. And so because of that, in 2015, Millward Brown Digital will have available for our clients our mobile clickstream panel that allows us to look at engagement on mobile devices. And that will complement our already existing desktop, laptop clickstream panel. For this study, we decided to look at desktop versus mobile engagement with a few of the bigger players within the tech OEM space, so manufacturers of technology devices like smartphones, tablets, wearables, flat panel TVs. And so we'll look a little bit at the engagement with some of those brands. And then we also picked out a couple of key online retailers who sell electronics, and we'll look at the engagement with them as well. For this study, as I mentioned earlier, we have used our Compete Clickstream panel, but we also have a little bit of data in here from a wireless shopper survey that we conducted in Q3. And so the results that we'll look at for that were based off of people who answered that they had shopped for items like cell phones, tablets, flat panel TVs, OTT devices, wearables, gaming systems, and wireless accessories. And so we asked them some questions around where they were shopping and what devices they were using while shopping, and so we'll have a little bit of that mixed in here as well. So the Compete Clickstream panel, as I mentioned, it's the largest panel of its kind in the U.S., and it now spans desktop, laptop, and mobile devices. Basically, people who join the Compete panel install a meter on their device, and we're able to measure all of their online activity by tracking all of the websites and clicks that they do while they're shopping or browsing online. We have a patented approach to how we normalize and put out our estimates on this online activity based off of that 2 million person U.S. panel for desktop and laptop. And as I mentioned, going into 2015, we'll also start to have panel activity for mobile devices. And then finally, just to give everyone a quick overview, these are the brands that we're going to be looking at today. As I mentioned, we selected a few brands in the tech OEM space here, so you can see Apple and HTC, LG, Microsoft, Motorola, and Samsung. And then a couple of key online electronics retailers, so Amazon, Best Buy, eBay, and Walmart. So those are the brands that we'll be looking at today.
And hi everyone, this is Chris Collins. Just jumping in on that, we're excited to share this research with you, and we're particularly excited to focus on this category today for a couple of reasons. One is just that this is a category that people tend to be familiar with even if they're not working directly in the space. I'm sure all of you on the phone have a product, or in some cases multiple products from some of the brands that are shown on the left-hand side. And certainly we all engage with retailers like Amazon, Best Buy, and Walmart on a regular basis. So I think the familiarity with these companies and these brands makes the work that Aaron will share with you today more interesting. I think the other piece of it, though, too, is that just because we're highlighting a number of marquee brands in the tech space or a number of the major retailers that are channels for those tech brands, not all of these companies are equally strong engaging with mobile consumers. And so I think using some of these companies as an example of really just how widely dispersed the mobile experience is will be illustrative to folks of you on the call today.
Great. So now we'll go ahead and start to get into some of the data itself. First, we're going to look at that survey data that I mentioned. And so what we found from our survey is that nearly 3/4 of people who were shopping for these type of tech devices said that they did so online. And primarily they did so on a desktop or laptop. So on the left-hand side here, you can see the results from the question of, what channels did you use to shop for these products or services? That question was not mutually exclusive, so people could have shopped in multiple locations, which is why these don't necessarily add up to 100. But you can clearly see that, about just over 50% of people said that they did shop in a store, but really a majority of people are saying that their shopping activity is happening online. The right-hand side takes that almost 3/4 of people who shopped online and then asks them, when you were shopping online, which devices did you use? And again, this wasn't mutually exclusive because, people could have shopped online on their desktop at one point, but then later in their experience maybe looked something up on their smartphone or, read reviews on their tablet. And so, as you can see here, a majority of people did shop via their desktop or laptop, and about 30% of people said that they shopped on a smartphone, and slightly less doing so on a tablet device, just around 20%.
And just to clarify, this is data that is from our Q3 wireless quarterly survey. So on a regular basis, we're surveying consumers about their shopping preferences and behaviors as a complement to the clickstream data that we'll share in a bit. So this particular study was fielded last quarter, and we'll be updating that again later this year, and have updated data available for people in early Q1 if you're interested in that.
So that's kind of a little bit of a setup to lead us into looking at this clickstream data. The idea was to kind of see that, just that a lot of the shopping activity is just happening online. And so to start to look at that in a little bit more detail from the clickstream side, first looking at the OEM brands that we were looking at earlier, we wanted to see the comparison of the type of traffic that they're getting to shopping product pages on desktop and mobile devices. So what you can see here is that clearly Apple is driving the largest volume of engagement on both sets of devices, and Microsoft is doing well at driving traffic on the desktop device, but not quite nearly as well on the mobile side comparatively. These volumes are based off of January through July of this year, so basically the first 7 months of the year in aggregate, and looking at the total monthly unique visitors that visited shopping or product pages specifically. So this is actually a little bit, this isn't domain level traffic, this is actually a little bit deeper. These are people who were actually shopping products or services on the site, and so those are the volumes that we saw there. Now, one thing that might impact the mobile side of it, and just to add a little bit of color, you'll see there's some screenshots on the right-hand side. I quickly looked at the M.dot site for Apple and Microsoft, and I noticed that, just a really quick visual distinguishment between the two is Apple's page is completely focused on product, as you can see. They have an initial image at the top that links through to the particular product. In this case, it was for their iPad Air 2. And then the remainder of the buttons that appear on the page are for products. Whereas if you look at the screenshot on the right from Microsoft, while there's product items being listed on that initial page, there's also other content on there that's more related to sort of branding, or in this case, they have some content around some sort of public service, community service type items that they're doing, and it could be that that sort of those sort of items being on a small screen mobile device like that may be hindering people from engaging with some of the shopping that they could be doing if it was more prevalent. If we look at that in terms of share, while you can see that Apple, clearly is the biggest player on the desktop, here we really see that it owns the mobile side. So over 3/4 of the shopping activity that we saw happening from January through July on mobile devices for these brands was at Apple. And this slide also really shows you where Microsoft does a great job at getting about almost 30% of the share of shopping traffic on desktop, but then only gets around 9% of the share on a mobile device where most of that additional activity is kind of pushed towards Apple instead. One other thing that's kind of interesting here is that LG seems to kind of hold its own across both sets of channels. So they're commanding about 6% of the share both on the desktop and on the mobile side. And so then the last thing that we wanted to look at on the OEM side was the shopping reach when we compare it to the internet browser population. And so since Apple is clearly the winner, as we might say, in this particular group, and that kind of skews our ability to look at some of the detail of these other brands, I pulled them out of this particular chart so that we could focus on the other brands and look at the distinguishment between them. Essentially what this chart is showing is the reach to the shop pages of the internet browsing population. So the way to think of that is, of all of the people who were shopping on mobile devices, who were in the mobile population, just about 0.5% of them shopped product pages at Microsoft. And similarly, going up the left axis, of all of the desktop internet browser population, just below 2%, around 1.9%, shopped Microsoft products or services. What's also interesting to pull out on this is one of our sister companies puts out the Brand Z Top 100 Global Brands Report every year, and it's kind of interesting to look at how these brands fall in terms of reach when we compare them to where they rank in terms of their brand positioning. So from the 2014 Brand Z Top 100, Apple was the #2 brand in the world, Microsoft was #4, and then Samsung, who we can see here on our slide, is obviously kind of the next best player in the field. They came in at rank #29 of the global brands. So that gives you a little bit of the idea of the scale of some of these brands that we're talking about today. So next, kind of switching over and looking now at some of the key retailers, you'll remember the key retailers that we decided to look at for today were Amazon, Best Buy, eBay, and Walmart. Of course, we could look at other online retailers from our clickstream data, but we just decided to pick on a sample of them. And so first, what we're looking at here is category penetration at Amazon. So we wanted to focus in on the electronics category, but before we did that, we wanted to see, how does that really compare to some of the other categories that are at Amazon and the activity that's taking place on them. So, probably what some people might expect to be a kind of big category would be CPG, but as you can see here when we look at it, the penetration to shopping CPG is not nearly as high as the penetration of people who are shopping electronics, both on desktop and mobile devices. And then just to kind of throw in a third category for comparison, we looked at power tools, just because they're somewhat similar in their size and costs to electronics, so it kind of made sense to look at them comparatively, but we're still not seeing nearly the kind of engagement that we're seeing with the electronics category. So clearly this category is a big category, it's an important category, which is why we wanted to look at it today. So getting into looking at some of the shopping activity with these retailers, first we can see that Amazon really drives the most overall desktop traffic, and that's probably not a surprise to anybody on the phone. But what might be a little bit surprising is how well Best Buy is at competing with Amazon on the mobile side. So what we're looking at here is the total volume of UVs visiting these retailers, specifically their electronic portion of their site, during those first 7 months of 2014. And so you can see there in the darker color on the right the desktop, and the lighter color on the left the mobile volumes. And clearly Amazon is the best in desktop. Walmart does really well on desktop as well. But when you look at the lighter colors, it's really interesting to see that Best Buy is just driving nearly the same volume of activity on a mobile device as Amazon is. And part of why we think that might be is just due to the way that Best Buy has, really aggressively been marketing themselves, particularly through tactics that would be easily drive mobile activity. For instance, they're very heavy on email campaigns, and throughout this entire year, they've done a really good job of sending out lots of marketing and promotions through email blasts, and that's really even continued and heavied up in this third quarter. So while the data on the left is looking at really kind of the first half of the year or so, even as we've continued in Q3 and into Q4, this heavy mobile marketing efforts from Best Buy have continued, and you can see I have a screenshot there from October, from when they had a 4-day kickoff sale, and then of course going into Black Friday and Cyber Monday, they've continued to have heavy promotions and to send out pretty much daily messages to people who are signed up to receive their email blasts.
And just to build on this a little bit, I think this is really a key point, which is it's not a surprise to see that Amazon is driving a lot of both desktop and mobile consumer engagement. We would expect that. Similarly, it's not a surprise to see that Walmart is a leading retailer across screens. But I think what is important is, not all of these companies are positioned equally across both screens, and certainly from category to category, there's some important differences. So I think Aaron's insight that Best Buy is driving as much mobile engagement to the electronics category is a really important one for anyone that's trying to reach electronic shoppers, and particularly those that may be mobile first or be in a segment where the majority of their online browsing activity takes place on a mobile device. Best Buy may be as strong or even a stronger channel partner for you than Amazon would have been on the desktop.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point. So then next, taking a look at that activity in sort of a share format, here this really does start to give you a visual cue as to how that impact of Best Buy's engagement on mobile has done. So the bar across the top is looking at the share of shopping traffic on desktop, and the bar across the bottom is looking at that share of traffic on mobile. And there you can see where Amazon's at 37% and Best Buy's at 35%. So they're really kind of neck and neck in terms of that online mobile shopping activity. And then finally, taking a look at that shop electronics reach. So similarly to the way we looked at reach on the OEM side, we wanted to say of the browser population on both a desktop and a mobile device, what percentage of them are actually reaching and visiting the electronics pages at these retailers. So as you can see, Amazon being up in the far right corner shows that they're being the most effective overall. They're driving almost 2% engagement of the mobile browser population and almost 5% engagement of the desktop browser population. And compared to some of the other sites, that's just significantly better. Best Buy and Walmart are somewhat similar in their reach amongst the desktop side, but here we also see again that part where Best Buy is nearly in line with Amazon in terms of their percentage of mobile shopping. So that wraps up the content. As a quick review, of the OEMs that we took a look at, Apple really outperforms the other in terms of driving shopping activity on both sets of devices. But we did see that Microsoft does a good job on the desktop side, but maybe has some room for improvement on the mobile side. Amazon, of course, leads the retailer competitive set in driving electronic shopping activity on the desktop laptop, which we all expected. But what's kind of interesting that we saw is that Best Buy is really doing a good job on mobile devices in terms of driving shopping to electronics, and is nearly driving the same volume as Amazon has driven in the first 7 months of 2014. So now we have a little bit of time for some Q&A, and so for that portion we'll look to some of the questions that were asked by the group.
Yeah, so I'll start with the first question that we received. I'll paraphrase a bit. but it asks about the efforts that a lot of companies have made to make their content more mobile friendly, and the fact that some of those efforts haven't been that successful. And is there a point at which companies simply give up and say that their intention is that their visitors access their content primarily on tablets or laptops? And so I'll take a stab at this, and then Aaron, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. I don't suspect that companies will give up trying to engage with their consumers via mobile devices. I mean, certainly the stat that Aaron shared at the beginning about the percentage of use on Thanksgiving and Black Friday on mobile devices, I mean, that trend is not going to slow down. We know that through the proliferation of devices and the increased power of mobile networks, consumers want to be able to connect to content from any device at any time and on any network. So I think limiting your access or your consumers' access to information is ultimately going to be a mistake. However, I think what we're seeing here is not unlike what we saw in the early days of e-commerce, where a lot of traditional retailers really struggled to take what they did well in a physical retail environment and translate that to a digital environment. We're seeing the same sort of things where a lot of early market leaders in desktop communications and content, they're similarly struggling to adapt to mobile. So Wikipedia was the example that was referenced in the question. Microsoft is another example, clearly a dominant brand in desktop communications, and as we saw earlier, not a leader even within their own direct competitive space. And I think as we see companies like Birchbox and Warby Parker and some of these sort of web-first companies really start to dominate e-commerce, there's going to be similarly a wave of mobile-first digital brands that really are going to dominate how consumers engage with mobile-first content. So I would never recommend that Wikipedia abandon mobile consumers, but I do think there's the possibility that they'll be usurped by someone else that's maybe more mobile-first in their approach. So great question. Thanks for that. Then we had another question about conducting a similar analysis regarding the holiday season. And I think that's a fantastic question and absolutely something that we have been giving a lot of thought about. Black Friday, Cyber Monday just wrapped up. In fact, I just in my inbox earlier today received some of our updated Cyber Monday data. So we will be working on packaging that together and have an updated view of this category and other categories in the upcoming months, certainly with a focus on the holiday shopping period in particular. The goal today, though, again, was really just to highlight some of the key differences that we're seeing in terms of mobile engagement relative to desktop engagement, and use that as an introduction for some of you on the phone to what we can do with that mobile capability. And then finally, the question here about can we see a copy of the slide deck? Absolutely. We'll be following up with people who attended today, and everyone will be given the option of receiving the deck that we walked you through today. And if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to either Aaron or myself directly, and we'd be happy to respond to those offline.
Yes, and we will send out a copy of the recording of this as well, so that we could record this session. One other question we had was, are we limited to these specific brands? And of course, no, we aren't. Our panel lets us look at all online activity, so we could go in and see the engagement that's happening with brand sites for other brands in this space and outside of it. We selected a sample of brands to look at for this particular study, but certainly can extend that, especially on the retailer side. Of course, there's other retailers in this space who are not on this list. Target, for instance, is not on here, but we could clearly go in and do a similar measurement with them. And another question that came in that's very similar to that is whether or not we can get further into channel insights. And absolutely, we really just looked at scraping the surface of this to just kind of show more about the comparison of desktop versus mobile. But a majority of what we do for clients is going into deep channel insights for their competitive set. So for instance, not just looking at the activity with shopping electronics at Amazon, but taking that even further and saying what electronic products specifically are being shopped at Amazon. Is it desktops and laptops or tablets or smartphones or accessories, and looking at that distribution and being able to compare that distribution of products being shopped on a desktop versus a mobile device, because the thought might be, well, maybe laptop or maybe smartphones or accessories, people feel comfortable buying those kinds of items on a smartphone, but things like flat screen TVs are still primarily being shopped and purchased on desktop devices. So that's the kind of insights that we can get to, all the way down through to lower funnel and order activity for a lot of brands.
Great. Thanks, Aaron.
All right. Well, any other questions that came in that we didn't get a chance to address, we'll try to follow up with you after the fact. Really appreciate everyone's time today, and we're going to end a little bit early to give people some time back to their day. So thank you all for attending. If you have any questions or comments, like I mentioned, you can feel free to reach out to Chris Collins or myself, Aaron Peterson, here at Millward Brown. And again, thank you for attending.